all, welcome back to my channel where I make videos about success, productivity, and lifestyle. Today I want to talk about how I got into Stanford and my experience through the application process. So if you're interested in learning how to get into Stanford, then keep on watching. So first I want to cover some of the baselines, which include the quantitative aspects of your application. So this includes firstly your GPA and second your test scores. If you're not an Olympic athlete or something super distinctive, then these are going to be things that will keep your application from not being cut straight off the bat. So first, looking at the average GPA of an admitted Stanford student, the average GPA of an admitted Stanford student is a 4.18 on a 4.0 scale, which is an A average. This is pretty high, but you don't need a perfect GPA to get into Stanford as shown by the data here.
As you can see, most of the admitted students have a GPA above a 3.75, but there are students who have been admitted with lower GPAs.
Now moving on to test scores, the average SAT score for Stanford admits is between a 1420 and 1570. So you should aim for around a 740 or higher in math and a 720 or higher in reading. And the average ACT score is between 32 and 35.
However, keep in mind that this is the middle 50% of the admitted students, so there are 25% of students who have lower than a 32 on the ACT. However, to be in the middle 50% range of the admitted students, you should aim for around a 34 to a 36 in the reading section, a 30 to a 35 in the math section, and a 32 to a 35 in the composite section.
So this is just a rough ballpark of where your score should be so your application is considered. So if your scores fall below these ranges, then the most effective thing you can do is to study for the SAT or ACT and up your scores, since this is the primary reason that Stanford is going to reject your application. If you're above these scores, then you can assume your scores are efficient. So some quick advice if you haven't taken the SAT or ACT yet, or if you're planning on retaking it, spend a solid 4 to 5 hours a day for 10 days to a week. And just do like 10 practice tests. If you do more than that, you're going to see pretty marginal improvements, so that's kind of where the sweet spot is. Now, after each test, just be methodical and figure out where you made the mistakes, what thinking you were having to lead you to make those mistakes, and what ways you can change your thinking to avoid making those same mistakes in the future. So in summary, aim for these stats by investing a couple of weeks into your test prep and generally do well in school. Again, these are general guidelines, so don't be discouraged if you don't hit these exactly. Okay, so now on to the more important and distinctive part of your application, which is the qualitative section. So this section is comprised of your extracurriculars, your essays, and your recommendations. So what is Stanford looking for? There are two questions that Stanford is asking when they're reviewing your application. The first one is, will this person have a big impact on the world? And the second question is, will this person have a positive impact on the Stanford community? So looking at the first point of, are you going to have a big impact on the world? Stanford's looking for the following traits. The first is intellectual vitality, which can be defined as the initiative that you take in your own learning process. The second is passion and purpose. The third is your character. The fourth is your leadership, and the fifth is your ability to overcome challenges. These are the main pillars that Stanford is looking for, but they're also looking for people with energy, creativity, ability to get things done, independent thought, action, and value creation. So you might ask, how can I demonstrate that I have intellectual vitality or any of these other traits? So this is what you can do. First, figure out what you are uniquely good at that adds value to the world and that people have demonstrated interest in. Additionally, if you have a couple of years before applying, ask yourself, what are things that I could be doing now that most people aren't doing and won't be doing for the next 2 to 3 years? Once you answer that question, you're ready to start on your essay process. Now for the essay, this is your chance to showcase all of these traits that I mentioned previously. Once you make the first cut, the application committee is going to send your application to an admissions reader, and they're going to pitch you to a group of people who will then vote on whether you should be admitted to Stanford or not. So you need to make it easy for the application reader to pitch you. If you simply have good grades, a few clubs, and some pretty common extracurriculars, then your application reader's not going to have much to work with when they're trying to pitch you. It'll go something like, you're good at school, have a few leadership positions, are in a few clubs, but there's nothing really special about him. What you want them to say is, oh my gosh, we need this kid. Look what their teacher wrote about them. Look at this amazing thing they did. So how can you do this? You do this with your essay and your extracurriculars. To decide what you want to write for your essay, first come up with those attributes and descriptions that we talked about previously. For each of the description points, you need to come up with 2 to 3 stories or facts that demonstrate the qualities that you're trying to emit. Now, you need to make sure to contextualize these data points. Anyone can say, I created a nonprofit because I was passionate about volunteering and giving back to the community. But the admissions officer isn't going to know how that separates you from the thousands of other people who started nonprofits or clubs. To contextualize the achievement, you need to say something like this. I started X, which has Y members, and we contributed Z total hours working on this project. Having these concrete examples and values will allow your admissions officer to assign your action significance. Once you've demonstrated that you're a high achiever with these different stories and examples, now you need to convey your authenticity. This means that you need to show honesty around what you've done and why you've done it. You want to avoid coming off as if you just did these things to pad up your resume to apply to college. The admissions officer is going to ask themselves, does this activity or achievement seem deeply meaningful to the person? And what value has it created for the recipients? So ask yourself, why did I do this thing? Why was it interesting to me? You need to answer these questions for the admissions officer to believe in your story. Now to translate that to your essays, for the shorter essays, you want to follow this format. You want to start with some sort of statement that is, I did X because of Y. Then you insert the data points from the 2 to 3 stories that we came up earlier. Remember, these data points need to be contextualized. Now for the longer essays, such as your Common App or your other personal statements, you want to follow a more detailed structure. So first, a little bit of backstory to put what you're about to say into perspective. Then describe what exactly you wanted to accomplish. And at the most deep level, why did you want to accomplish that? What was driving you? You also want to touch upon what were your internal and external struggles. Then in the middle of your essay, what was that wall you hit? What was that biggest challenge that you needed to overcome? After you experienced this challenge, what was the epiphany you came to? And what was the plan that you created in response to this epiphany? Once you have the main body of the essay, then you can go into how exactly did you execute this plan and what challenges did you face while executing this plan. Finally, you can talk about the end result and what was the internal transformation that took place inside of you. So once you have these essays, you want to write 2 to 3 different essays around the 2 to 3 different examples that you came up with previously, and then show these essays to different people and have them rank them. This is really important because you don't want to just write one essay and then keep iterating on that because that severely limits you. Getting some external opinions about 2 to 3 different essays will help you really narrow down what values exactly are coming through the best and which essay is the most suitable for this application. So another thing that's really important is that Stanford would prefer to admit an applicant that is okay at most things and then really stands out in one particular area. So we call this a spike. And Stanford would rather choose this applicant over someone who is really good in a bunch of different areas, but doesn't really stand out in one in particular. Stanford is really looking to create a well-rounded class and not necessarily looking for someone who is personally well-rounded. So that is what Stanford is looking for in an applicant. So if you follow these tips, you're going to have a much stronger chance of getting into Stanford because now you know how to exactly put your best foot forward and demonstrate to the admissions officers your best qualities. Now next week I'm going to make a video about what I personally did that got me into Stanford, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. As always, thanks for watching and have a great day.